Okay. Perfect. Okay, so we should be going. So let's get started. Um, if we want to, it looks like y'all are on an adventure currently. We can just keep this one shorter. But starting off, let's do what's the word? Do you want to start with Jigsaw and like our reading materials and what we all learned from that and go from there? I don't know if anyone wants to start
Yeah,
reading.
that sounds awesome.
Cool. Nice. I literally did all of the readings right before. First off, the fairy tale Bluey episode, I kindly would like to know if that is true. I don't want to know if that's false. I'd like it to be true. Thank you very much. Moving forward. Um, I'm trying to think. I think the main thing that I got from a lot of the readings was that the people that we surround ourselves with really affects how um like everything about ourselves is directed. And I saw something or I remember hearing that like the seven closest people that you interact with, you gain habits from them. And so in some way it makes sense that the same people that you interact with on social media or just anywhere and surround yourselves with, your morals are going to shift that way. No matter how hard you're going to try to stay on one spot, you're always going to shift and adjust to the people you interact with, which I thought was interesting.
No, I completely agree. Because one of my like jigsaw reads, it was like the fake, like toxic anti-faith influencers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just it talked about like kind of like how you can detect them and like evaluate them. It's like how we go through like all of these like internal and external like observations of like the people we interact with like physically and like a personal basis. And I feel like this is just kind of like what I started thinking about when I was like reading about it was like your body, like you kind of like analyze the people you hang out with when you're first starting to hang out with them. And like you talk to them and you kind of get to know them and then you build like connections and build relationships and then build like friendships with them. But it's like on social media, like influencers, like we skip so many aspects of that and just go and are like right in the personal level. Like they're over there trying to share like personal things and just like trying to get like views and like attention and stuff like that. And that just I don't know. It like we form this connection where we feel like we put so much trust in a stranger without really any foundation. And so then it's like when they start saying things, like we automatically believe they're true without like any validation. Whereas in person, we tend to question, think, and like analyze what we hear from people a lot more than what we do online. Because we just, I don't know, our brains are just like, yep, it's true. And it can lead to like toxic faith environments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's kind of, I was listening, so the J.K. Rowling like podcast things, the one that I was listening to, she mentioned that she's like, she got, I'm trying to think of the word, I think it's immortalized or like, she just got put on a pedestal of just like, oh, like perfect. And then like knowing, hey, I'm a mortal person, I'm going to make mistakes, I'm not going to be like the greatest person. And so as soon as we put them on that pedestal and as soon as somebody or something slips up, and it's just wrong in our personal opinion, then that person is now horrible. And how dare they? Never mind that they're human and that they are learning just as much as we are. But yeah, good thoughts. And Daily, Eliza, either one of you have a thought?
Yeah. Here. Yes or no?
Sorry, you
Can you
just,
guys hear me?
yeah, you just glitched out just for a split second right there.
Okay, but you guys can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Um, I'll try to be brief, but I really enjoyed the readings. I think for the Bluey episode, um, Sorry, I like can't really see my paper, so if you see me like holding it right up to my face. But one of the thoughts that I had for that episode was like good things can come from the worst situations, or like to him what seemed like the worst situation. Um, and then sorry guys, that's my husband flashing the light. And then we don't always need to get involved where a child can find a solution or learn a lesson. Um, just like when his dad was like, you know what, I think this could do him some good, or when the grandma came and was like, uh, you know what, like I'm not going to say your name, but think about this for a little bit, you know? And so I think that's like important that like we can't control everything that everybody does, you know, but we can be understanding, we can be kind, we can kind of guide them a little bit along the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and kind of like with the, I guess that kind of goes hand in hand with like the competencies over compliments thing. Um, just like that's where confidence really comes from, is the ability to do something, not just what somebody says to you. Um, there was so much. Are we like gonna go over them one at a time, or are we just kind of?
I think right now it's kind of just like whatever your thoughts are on the readings that you want to share. And then if there's
Yeah,
something with your jigsaw that you want to discuss.
really. So it's the are you safe in my class, or you are safe in my classroom one. I thought that one was really powerful. That like, especially as like educators or just anywhere we are, it's never our place to judge. Um, we're only called to love, especially as like disciples and stuff like that. And that kind of made me think of um, one of the jigsaws that I did about the J.K. Rowling one. I listened to episode 5. They were just talking about like, anyways, one of the things that I got from it was like, when do we take on a responsibility that isn't ours to the point where we forget to love our neighbor? Um, and so like I just thought that that was really interesting too, like how, especially with everything that's going on in this world, if we don't embrace humility, if we don't try to truly listen or understand that we don't know everything, it keeps us from the main point of being human, which is, you know, and not being God, which is to just love one another, right? Even trying to figure out, you know, all the politics and just different things of this world, right? Um, as for my other jigsaw, it was about phone free schools. And this one was really interesting. I kind of kept going back and forth in my brain whenever I was reading each paragraph, because it was like, oh, like taking away the phones, you know, obviously, like even having a phone in your pocket can be more distracting, even if you're not looking right at your phone, you know? And it was like all of these statistics and stuff like that, how difficult it is for staying on task and staying focused, and also how the phone addiction has gone up, but the mental health has gone down in a lot of students. Um, but also, it kind of went into like, you know, is it more dangerous to have students without with phones, or is it more dangerous to have students without phones? Because like, especially like people will argue during an emergency, right?
Mm-hmm.
At school, like they want to have contact with their children. And they kind of made the argument in the article that when these parents who want to have contact with their children all the time, when crime was way higher than it is now, they they would just go off on a bike or to their friend's house for hours on end without having contact with their parents, you know? And he was just saying that like he thinks that it would do the kids some good. And so that kind of got me thinking a little bit. I don't think I'm totally on board with like completely banning phones in school, but it did kind of get me thinking a little bit of like, you know what, like kids don't need, and we've talked about this a million times, right? Like they don't need access to all this information. They don't need to be, you know,
Mm-hmm.
in contact with their parents at all times 24/7. It could actually do them some good to not be in contact with them all the time, you know, or like all day every day. And just different things like that. And so I thought that one was really interesting as well.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because I had a lot of my readings were focused on um kind of like the anxieties and like the jigsaws I had. A lot of them were focused on like the emotional extremes that the like teens growing up and just people have now more, especially with social media. Like if you look on social media, you have such high extremes on like political sides or just different issues, whatever it is, there's such a high extreme and these emotional like extremes are so prominent in my in these things. Um, and one of my readings, it was like we need to not. I think I'm trying to remember if it was a jigsaw. I don't remember if it was jigsaw, but it is the like we need to not teach our kids to fear the world because we're so caught up in like I don't want them to be in trouble. I don't want them to be in danger, but we forget that kids need to go out and explore and know that the world is a good place. Like it is a place that is good, but it also does, yes, there are the dangers and there needs to be a balance instead of being so far the extreme that we are.
No, I, yeah, I agree that with that. I feel like my like Jigsaw article kind of related a lot, or like in some ways to like dailies as well. Where it talked about like, and I guess like kind of everybody else, but just like the effects of social media. This one was like the effects of social media in teenage girls though. So it got pretty specific and was just like, why is it causing like more depression and more anxiety in girls per se? And kind
Mhm.
of went into like the draw of comparisons. Like girls naturally kind of get caught up and in comparing their self image more than like guys necessarily. Like they compare like other things, but girls compare that self image. But then they were just kind of talking like something happened in like 2010 where like it just like shifted and like it just started like, you know, increasing the amount of like depression and anxiety in girls like after that date, kind of what happened. And then they were doing like experiments and there was like this one that was like pretty valid, but it didn't show huge correlation necessarily in social media. And like it was like yeah, other things, contribute to and like yeah, social media can contribute to it, but like there's also other contributing factors affecting these girls and like just teenagers in general. Which I thought was pretty cool and like pretty valid because like it's hard to say that like the sole cause of depression and anxiety in teenagers is social media and phones. But then it also talked about how it doesn't like what's the word I'm looking for? Um, Even if you per se, like let's per se, or like a teenage girl doesn't have social media or is on it like less than 10 minutes a day, but all of her friends are consistently on it for like an hour a day, that can cause anxiety and depression in the girl who's not on it because she's left out of the social networking that her group is contributing to. That they are, in a, like, being friends online and she's not. And so she's left out of that circle that way, which can cause her anxiety and depression because she's left out. And it's like, well, not having it is now kind of causing, anxiety in teens too because of that. I don't know, lack that, kind of being pushed out of that friend group. So I thought
That
that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's actually super interesting because like I've definitely seen that in my own family because like with my younger sisters and like my younger siblings, my parents didn't get them phones until they were um like my sister just turned 17 this year and she got her first phone. And like when I don't think it was that much of a difference from when I got it either. Like I got my first iPod when I was in middle school, right? And then I didn't get a phone until I was 16, but I still had that access to social media with my iPod and stuff. But with my younger sister, it's kind of crazy that like you brought that up because she definitely had that like anxiety and stuff like that because she felt left out, not because she's like, oh, I want to be on social media or whatever, but because it stressed her out that anytime she needed something, she had to ask somebody to borrow their phone. And so, like, I think it's super interesting because it's like, I guess when you were kind of explaining what you had read, what came to my mind was like just being in the world and not of the world, right? Because social media isn't going to go away, and like neither is the technology, right? And I think we're so fortunate to have prophets that can bring us that hope of like, hey, this stuff isn't going away, but we can learn how to make good of it, you know? Like it's not like everybody who's on social media has to experience anxiety and depression, or everybody who doesn't have a phone has to experience anxiety or depression or a short attention span or something like that. But if we can teach our kids or students the skills that they need to have that control, have that confidence, no matter what they see on social media, they're not quick to believe something that isn't true just because they saw it, and they're not quick to self-deprecate because they see somebody else living a different life than them. You know what I mean? I think it's more about the skills that we can teach ourselves and our kids about who they truly are, so that they don't fall into those traps when they come, because they're inevitably going to come. You know what I mean?
No,
I
I
agree.
can't believe. Oh, go ahead.
You're good. You guys can hear me, right? Okay, I just want to make sure. Sometimes my headphones hate me, but I was just gonna say it kind of goes into like what I read in my Jigsaw because it talked to because the one that I read was called yes, we do know social media isn't safe, and I mean like we were talking about before, like um I definitely felt I for the long for like majority of like the end of like my middle school years to like my like junior year of high school, I had a flip phone. And so like the only like way to like look anything up was to use the school's computers or to go home and ask my mom if I could use her phone. And so it was like it was a lot of like we said before, it was a lot of like just FOMO because you're like, oh, I don't have social media. I don't really want to use it to like as everyone else wants to use it. I just want to know what my friends are doing, especially when I moved. It was really hard because I was like, oh, I want to know what my friends are doing so I can keep up with them. And it wasn't until like a month or two after I moved that I indeed broke the flip phone by accidentally dropping it in my couch and my brother crushed it. But um that I got an iPhone. I broke the unbreakable, guys. It was like a Nokia. Like it broke. I was shocked. But it wasn't until I got the iPhone that I mean, of course, I then developed a screen addiction because I had access to everything, which I felt like no matter what led to me having like an increase of mental health because I was like, oh, I'm experiencing FOMO, so I have the anxiety of I have no idea what's going on. And then now I have this phone and now I feel like I'm missing out on the things going on around me because I'm more focused on what's on my phone and what's on social media than what's going on with my friends or my roommates or my parents or my like just everything around me is happening and I'm like I'm missing everything because I'm so addicted to this, but it's also such a hard addiction to break is that it is in fact like social media is just so harmful and like I mean yes I could like I've tried deleting social media, it didn't work, but like you can just there's so many different ways to like work on it, but ultimately it's always that part of you that's like I need to know more and I want that FOMO, like I have to know what's going on, so the FOMO kicks in and it's like it's just this never, I feel like it's just this never ending cycle of you want to know what's going on, but then you know what's going on, and then you miss out on other things because you only focus on what's going on in a certain like aspect of things.
I really like that comment of like, um, it almost kind of makes me think of that quote that says like, "Be where your feet are." Like we don't want to miss out on all this. You know, back to the whole we were never supposed to have this much information at once, right? Or I guess we are supposed to, right? Because Heavenly Father's plan, right? Like none of this would have come about if He hadn't guided certain people and stuff. Um, But I think, you know, how we use it and how we take it in and what we choose to believe is huge. But I really like what you said about like, uh, you know, we feel like we're missing out, but then aren't we missing out on what's happening closest to us for something that's happening away from us, you know? And so it's really interesting. I feel like it's almost like a trade-off of like, if you don't have that balance, it's one or the other, you know? Instead of, oh, I can take 15 minutes to be on social media a day, you know, because like 15 minutes is a good chunk of time, you know, even if we're like, oh, I just spent an hour on social media or scrolling through videos, just trying to relax or something like that. But in reality, it's like live, like be where your feet are, you know? So
Yeah, that reminded me in one of my jigsaws, it was with Jonathan Haidt. And he mentioned he's like, there's three untruths that we've learned so well. One of them being like, we've learned to be fragile so that we are now harmed by like books or conversations or like talks or speeches or whatever. And in my brain, I was like, it's interesting because those are more so the traditional, like how we learn, how we understand things versus now where it's all social media and all of like just quick answers. It's no longer, I'm no longer going to the library and searching through the catalog and through the stacks of books. I'm now just searching on my laptop. Um, and so I don't know, it's really interesting that sort of aspect of just like you're learning to be fragile and to not accept. So we like we'll say, I'm just gonna use social media to relax and calm down for a second. And then like instead you're now fragile so that I don't know. It was just a really interesting thought.
No, I really like that, Haley. Um, just I don't know how you were like, oh, like you used to be like books and talks and communicating with people. Like that used to be like our main form of like receiving knowledge and like getting our questions answered and like, you know, speaking. Sorry. But now it's like we have the internet at our hands. And just thinking about that, I was like, and it's getting faster and faster. Like I feel like I remember through like all through school, like having Google and like, oh, we get to like Google our answers. We get to use like Google on this time. And so it's like we get to look it up and like look through our sites to find an answer. And it's like, oh, within like 2 or 3 minutes, like we can have an answer to like whatever question we had instead of like an hour looking through a book. But now we have AI and it's took away that, 2 to 3 minutes from searching on websites in Google to, 4 or 5 seconds. And it's just constantly getting quicker and quicker, and just like our attention to it is just getting shorter and shorter. But then just like a thought I had while Daly and Eliza were talking was about like I forgot which I don't know if it was my jigsaw or something else that was in the reading, but it was talking about like parenting and parenting with social media. Um, and how at least I hope it was for this class. It might have been my instructional methods class. No, I think it was this class. Actually, but it's talking about like parenting with social media and how it's like try to set like limits for your kids. When they first have it, like yeah, you can have it, but like you can be on it for 30 minutes a day. Get caught up, do what you need to, but it like inhibits like doom scrolling and like getting into places they probably shouldn't be. And it's like follow your kids on social media, be like active with them, like be a good example of like using social media too. Like you're just such an incredible example with your kids. Like you don't sit there and doom scroll for 2 hours a day. That's gonna make your kids want to sit there and doom scroll for 2 hours a day. And just like going into like making sure like it's safe and they have like limitations and just like yeah, it can be like scary putting them on like the internet and all this because they've access so much, but like teach them how to use it effectively. Like don't just let them figure it out and like run around and like make their expectations, but like help guide them into using it as more of like a tool and like a way to stay connected to friends and family, which is so amazing. Instead of just like using it for gratification and popularity.
Mhm. For sure. Okay. Awesome. I like this conversation. We can move on unless someone else has something they want to share or they thinks like I would really like to include this. Going once, going twice. Perfect. Let's move on. So the next part is going to be Socratic seminar if anyone has any questions, or as well as the 99 studies and the paper of the week. Paper of the week, I was just barely looking at it, but I wasn't able to finish like filling out the whole form. But anyone from the 99 studies paper of the week, anyone want to start off with that? I can start. I can at least start with the 99 studies paper of the week. I can look it up. But for the 99 studies, the one that I really liked is the stress mindset one. It's number 51. Um, that one I really liked because it points out that stress can be taken in two different ways. It can be taken as good stress or bad stress. But when we allow stress or when we acknowledge that stress is a good thing, we tend to benefit from it more often. Because when you think of stress just as a bad thing and you're trying to avoid it at all costs, then in some cases you're no longer worried or concerned about said subject or said thing. Um, and so you're no longer proactively working on it. But when you think of stress as, oh, it's a good thing, I'm stressed about this assignment, you're proactively working on that subject. And as a teacher, I was just like, that's good to know because students, I feel like, especially growing up, I was never taught stress to be a good thing. I was always taught stress can be a bad thing or is like when too much, it just takes over. And then in life, you just need to learn to balance it out. And the gospel's not as stressful as we all make it out to be, in my opinion. But I thought that was really cool. I really like that study and just understanding that balance between good stress and bad stress, and that we get to decide what that stress is going to be to us.
Yeah, I really like that one too. I did that one as well. And for like the gospel application to it or something like that, or even like the classroom application, or life application, all the applications. I was just thinking like, I read this quote one time that was like, fear is what if, but faith is even if. And I really liked that in like relation to that 99 study because it's like, I mean, obviously there are cases where, like you said, like bad stress where it becomes debilitating and it's like, clinical anxiety or depression or something like that. And it's like, oh my gosh, like, like your brain chemistry is off. But there's the kind of stress that's like, all right, like, even if, instead of, oh my gosh, what if I fail this test? Then it's like you reach an endpoint. It's like, oh my gosh, what if I fail this test? That's it. I'm gonna fail. Like I'm never gonna have a job. I'm never gonna pass this class. I'm never, you know what I mean, this and that. And then just keeps going down that route, right? But if we apply it in the sense of even if, like, okay, even if I fail this test, I have another one coming up. I have other things that I can do. I have resources that I can, you know what I mean? And I think that's what changes it what can help change it from a good stress to a bad stress is when it's like, all right, even if this happens, like there is still hope, and that's always what the gospel is, right? Like even if I mess up big time, there's still hope in Jesus Christ, right? And I think if we can teach that to our students, like there's always hope. You are never fully gone just because you failed a test, you failed a quiz, you didn't understand a concept the first time around, right? Kind of back to that concept of we need to teach them how to, have that growth mindset, and we need to teach them that part of learning is failing, and that's okay. So I also really like that one.
That was a good one.
I have not got to the 99 studies in article yet. So that's my bad. But I'll get to it later tonight.
That's okay. If you want to send in like the chat and you're like, hey, this is something I really liked, go ahead and like absolutely.
Yeah.
But Eliza, were you able to get to it?
I was able to get to the 99 studies, but not the article. I like I had to pull it up on my phone because I forgot the actual book at home. But I did the one about going for a walk, and that study focused a lot on like the benefits of going for like taking a break, either like whether it's going outside or walking around like the hallway or the classroom, like things like that. And it like seemed it like from the sound the look of the event from what I could tell, like it's really beneficial because it really just enhances the student's mood. I can vouch for that because the kid that I work with, we go on walks all the time. Which is, I feel like is what pulled me towards it is just I go on lots of walks just to keep my kid focused. Um, and so that was kind of something that I think that was like a classroom implication for me was to go was to just like especially as a teacher to like halfway through the lesson or like the class or like depending on what grade you teach, obviously like depending it depends on like how long you teach for, but going for walks just periodically, whether it's like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, just like around the school or in your classroom just to get the kids moving can really just benefit their mental health. And then the gospel implication is kind of just like that I can think of is just kind of take a break is like just to kind of taking a break and like focusing on the Savior and like your relationship with him every now and again because I feel like life gets overwhelming, whether it's school or work or just like life in general. Life can get really, really stressful and to the point where you just like don't feel like you can keep going. And so I think just taking that time to just reflect on your relationship is really like helpful and beneficial.
For sure. I also did that study as well as one of my other ones. I really like I I love my grandparents to death. They're my favorite people of all time. I mean, they let me stay with them. But they're always asking me like, "Hey, do you want to ride to like school or like whatever?" And I'm like, "Yes, however, I need to walk because I need exercise and it makes me feel good about life." It's really interesting. Also, because like when you're in school, you're in a setting and the students are in a setting to sit down all the time and to not like move or adjust. And they're like, I don't know, I think walking's a good thing. Okay. Cool, cool, cool. So I'm pretty sure all of us kind of mentioned that we are working on the paper of the week currently. Does anyone have any thoughts about it as they've glanced at it? Because I was just looking at it just barely, and it was talking, it's like like talking about the pre-kindergarten programs. So like I can't think of the words, but like that whole system and the benefits there. I don't really have a whole lot of opinions about the pre-K programs, but I don't know about you guys, if you have opinions there.
I mean, I haven't read through the study completely yet. I kind of the same thing, just kind of glanced over it.
Mhm.
Um, and just like right off the bat, like just from my opinion, which obviously is not fact, um, I think there are really valuable things that that like a kid could learn in pre-K, but I also think it's slightly more valuable if you can just help them learn skills at home, right? Like, one, you get that time with them because they're so young and their brains are still like developing, you know what I mean? I think it would benefit them more to maybe just have safe settings. And not that pre-K isn't safe or anything like that, but like I don't think and it might be ideal for some parents, right? That are like, I need to put my kid in like a daycare or something like that, right? Like,
Mhm.
because I can't watch them. I know not everybody's fortunate enough to stay home with their kids, right? But if, like, for example, if I were given the chance, I would stay home with my kids and try to help them learn, like how to be around other people and how to respect others and different things like that in ways at home, because I feel like there's a lot of benefit that comes from that. And in my eyes, and from what I've seen in my own family, like my oldest brother was the only one that went to pre-K. It didn't matter. The rest of us didn't, and we all turned out just fine. You know what I mean? And so, and my mom even said, like, I wish I'd gotten that little bit of time with him when he was young. You know what I mean? But that's just a personal experience, right? I'm sure there are other people who are like, oh my gosh, pre-K was so awesome for my kids. And so I think it may just depend on the child or the parent and the circumstances, you know, like I didn't look at the whole study yet, but what I think like right off the bat is that there wouldn't necessarily be any harm to it, um but that I guess that would just be my question going into it, like is
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting because I was looking at the abstract, so like the summary of it, and it was like saying that pre-K programs were like there's a negative effect on children in like um test scores or in disciplinary things. I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think it depends a lot as well on what that pre-K program is that you're doing. Because like for me, at least I know my mom, like I went to like preschool, but it wasn't like actual preschool. It was just my mom and some friends got together and said, let's have our children unite and have a play period in which we teach them some random things. Like, I don't know. I think it can be helpful, but I'm with you, Daily, where it's like the benefits, I'm not sure if it benefits or if it's really a negative thing. Who knows? It reminds me of the of last week's, I think it was last week's paper of the week where it talked about the different things about children and that sort of thing. But okay.
Yeah, I know oh, sorry.
No, you're all good. I was just gonna ask.
Yeah, I was like, I think I mentioned this like last week about when my teacher said about how sometimes kids tend to even like do better in school when they don't go to preschool. And I was like, I can see that, but it's like he just kind of meant it more as like there's so many more benefits that I feel like society doesn't see from kids being home with mom, is like what he said. But then I also think like the big thing in like society that's making it harder on today's youth and like teenagers, and it even said this in my jigsaw, like it's because growing up used to be so like play based, and kids used to be play based, and kids like their job is to play in a sense. And now it's becoming so phone and technology based. Like that's kind of the the culture of childhood now is more tech than play. And so I feel like it's just, trying to keep things more play based. And I feel like wherever kids are, if you let kids be kids when they're that little, um, can be beneficial.
Mhm. I like that a lot. Okay. I went too far. Sorry. Okay. I like it. Agreed. Any other comments, Eliza? Do you have any comments? You look like you're about to comment.
Yeah, sorry, I just went running to go grab something out of the car. But I was gonna say I agree with Savannah. Schools have definitely become a lot more phone-based. At the school that I work at, the kids, mainly the sped kids, because that's all I really work with, they most of them do like roughly like 10 to 15 minutes of work, and then they get to go on the computer or they get to look at their phone or their iPad or something for another 10 to 15 minutes. And then it's just this never ending like cycle of work, work, watch, work, watch. And it's not until they go outside for lunch or when they actually need a break, other than being inside the school all day, that they like go outside and they play. And so what I've tried to start doing just to get my kid off of the internet because it's a struggle, is just having him work more on like, oh, let's play on the swing or let's play with this yoga ball or let's do this, let's do that. Anything to just keep him motivated without him asking all the time, can I watch this can I watch this on the iPad? Can I do this? Can I do that? Just so that way we're not constantly like, oh no. But I can't remember. I know I the first year was, and then switching back to preschool age kids. I don't really remember preschool if I'm being completely honest. I just remember my mom working there, And then like, we would go out for lunch sometimes. That's like the main thing I remember. I think that's kind of what made it more fun, having our parents that worked there. And so I think it kind of just obviously depends on like kid whether or not they enjoy it or not. But just having them obviously play more because my cousin has her kid in a daycare and they sound a little bit more play based, but I don't know. But I think for sure just trying to figure out ways to keep the kids off of technology, especially since a lot of schools have now had a lot of their assignments on a Chromebook, is like very much ideal. And I think, I don't know, as a teacher, I think I'll try my best to keep my kids off of a Chromebook, unless obviously by the time I graduate, which is years away, but but everything gets switched to online officially. But I think finding ways to make it more play based instead of technology based is like really helpful.
And I think like adding to that is like also not just telling them, hey, like get off your phone or like technology is bad or something like that. Like really helping them understand why, like we like what it does to our brains and our bodies and stuff like that. Like when we use technology, when we abuse it, right? When we use it too much, and all of the benefits, like and showing them too, right? Like through example and different things like that, showing them that this life is meant to be lived with our heads up, you know, not down at our screens all the time and stuff. And so I think not just just adding to what exactly what you guys were saying, like making it more play based, but also showing them that hey, this stuff is good, but this is how it's meant to be used, and this is why. You know what I mean? So that they can understand it and internalize it rather than just be like, well, my mom was just so mean growing up because she never let me have a phone or an iPad like my other friends had or something like that. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Nice. I agree. Great comments. That was really weird. Okay, is there anything else? Because we can honestly wrap up if any, unless anyone has any comments.
I'm okay wrapping up because my phone's about to die.
Okay. Savannah and Eliza are both good at that. Okay, perfect. Then I'll stop the recording.